Hello, friends of ARC. Thank you so much for stopping by today and joining us for another episode of season 2 of the ARC series. My name is Aaliyah. I'm one of the co-founders.
And my name is Christina, also one of the co-founders.
In this series, we'll be joined by special guests, Asian Canadians who we believe are amazing inspirations in our communities. In each episode, we will be highlighting some of our favorite local Asian restaurants. Our hope is that in these sessions, we get to engage in a fun conversation about our Asian Canadian experiences over food, because what better way to capture our cultures and cultivate meaningful relationships? Today, we are so very excited to have a special guest joining us, Justine Abigail Yu.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here and for joining us. So for our viewers today, our guest of honor, her name is Justine Abigail Yu, by the pronoun she, her, is the founder of Living Hyphen, a community and multimedia platform that explores what it means to live in between cultures as a hyphenated Canadian, that is, an individual who calls Canada home, but who has roots somewhere else. She is an award-winning writing workshop facilitator whose work with Living Hyphen has been featured in international, national, and local media outlets, including the Globe and Mail, CTV National News, and the CBC. She was also named a Changemaker by the Toronto Star in October 2021. Damn straight you are. And Justine Abigail is a fierce advocate for equity and anti-oppression. Her mission is to stir the conscious and spur social change. That is incredible. Thank you so much, Justine.
Thank you for having me. This is great. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for the work that you do and for sharing the work that we're doing at Living Hyphen. What an honor.
Then thank you so much. It is such an honor to have you here on ARC, on the series. Before we jump into the questions, why don't you start off by telling us what restaurant you ordered from and maybe give us a glimpse of some of the
Okay. I have a lot of good food to share with you all. I ordered from one of my favorite Filipino restaurants in Toronto, Ontario. It's called Islas Filipino Barbecue and Bar in Roncesvalles. And the head chef there is Mark, what is Mark's last name? Buenaventura, I think it is. And shall I unbox all of this? I got so much food. Okay, of course, I'm going to start with this because I feel like I had to bring in a classic here of adobo. Oh, there is rice. Of course there's rice. Okay, so I don't know if you can see here. My space is very little or small. Okay, so we have adobo, which is a Filipino classic. It's usually chicken or pork marinated in soy sauce, garlic, vinegar, bay leaves. And this is very special because it has garlic rice and egg, which is just how you need to top it all off. We also have here chicken barbecue skewers, some really good barbecue. I'm so excited. Okay, there's a lot of food. I'm showing it all off because I love Islas. I always go, and I just want to hype them up. But I also got you can't really see the broth here, and I'm not going to tip it over because it will spill, but bulalo, and I don't really know how to translate it or to describe it, but it's like a beef broth. It's my absolute favorite food, and I had to order it because it's just so good. And we also have, this is going to be your whole segment, is just me talking about the food I'm eating tonight. I guess that's the point. Okay, of course we have some classic lumpia, which is another very popular Filipino food. It's spring rolls. And of course, I had to make room for dessert. And it's going to look very similar to the lumpia, but it's a way to end our meal, turon. So it's a fried banana with, is it jackfruit? I think it's jackfruit in it. sometimes.
Sometimes it's jackfruit, I think. Sometimes it's just the fried banana with the wrapping.
Yeah.
And sugar.
Yeah, exactly. So that's everything I have to eat tonight. Thank you all for having me and giving me an excuse to order from my favorite restaurant here in Toronto. So
that oh my god, that food looks so delicious. I have to say, I have not tried Isla, so and I'm Filipino, so I'm like, oh my god, I have to try this now.
Yeah, it's so good. And what's great about Isla, sorry, I'm like struggling to figure out where to put all my food here. 1 second.
Right beside you on the couch.
I put it on the floor for now. Small downtown living, what can I tell you? They have really great fixed price menus. So for a pretty affordable price, you can get, your main course and the appetizer, the lumpia that I had, and your choice of a dessert, which is for me to run. So yeah, you need to try, Aliyah.
Yeah, I actually, you know what? I think I'm gonna do that this weekend. So
Christina, have you been?
Pardon?
I was asking Christina if she's been.
I have. I've been once in person. This was like way before the pandemic, which I have in person, which was really nice.
Whoops. Sorry.
And so it's okay. And then actually, if Aliyah, if you remembered this during the pilot with Phil DeLuna, I ordered Islas.
Was that Islas? I thought you ordered the other one.
Canto?
Yeah, your parents met.
Oh yeah, Canto. That's actually for a different episode.
Oh god, see, I'm mixing it up. We're such foodies that it it all kind of just.
That's great.
Delicious.
Final.
What's it called? I can go next and share what I got. So I live also in Toronto, but more Midtown, and there's a great local sushi restaurant here that's really popular called Echo. So what I do in these episodes, as our viewers will know, I usually put it on a plate because yes, Toronto living, my office is in my bedroom and like I have a little nook in the corner. So I got some sweet potato and avocado rolls, veg tempura, sushi pizza, because who doesn't love carbs on carbs, especially deep fried carbs. Of course, I got a miso soup. I'm not going to tip it over, like just all over my laptop. And I also got a seaweed salad. I'm a sucker for like all types of Japanese and Filipino, Korean, Thai salads. I just love them. Yeah, that's what I got. I actually didn't get a dessert. I don't know why. I forgot about it. We usually do get desserts or a drink. How about you, Christina? What did you get?
All right. So usually when I'm filming, it is down at my family's home in South Etobicoke, where it's literally cooler by the lake, especially for this season. However, I am currently house sitting for my aunt and cousin because they're out of town, and I have a nephew bunny by the name of Theodore, so I'm just watching him, and he's just chilling. But in terms of where I am, I'm currently at North York at Bathurst and Wilson, and today's restaurant is brought to you by Torch Press Sushi. So they're very bougie. I kind of got like a tasting bento box, and it has like the Torch sushi, edamame, seaweed salad, all the works, and a couple of seaweed rice rolls. So
I was gonna say, I'm like, what is this? I'm like,
what is it called? Torch?
Yeah, Torch Press Sushi.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah. And then I also got like the seafood platter appetizer, which some bougie chipotle mayo sauce. It looks bomb diggity. And for dessert, well, other than having Nestea, I have a chocolate matcha cheesecake. So bon appetit, everyone, because, well, we might as well eat.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say, I already started diving in because I just couldn't wait.
I saw you diving in there. I was like, okay, I guess I'll start.
Yeah, might as well.
Just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, the salad is
so good. It's my first time ordering the adobo from
really?
Isla.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I was talking as I was chewing on the seaweed, and I think one came out of my mouth. Christina, you have to edit that out.
I'll find it. I'll try to find it. If not, that's totally fine.
It's fine.
If you spot it, we can make it like a blooper or meme.
There it goes, out of her mouth.
It's all good. And Justine, whatever you're ready, my first question to you is, what does your everyday life look like?
My gosh, yeah. Every day is honestly very, very different from me. So, I am the founder of Living Hyphen, and that's a large chunk of the work that I do. But in addition to that, I actually work freelance in marketing and communications, and I work with a lot of different organizations who are in the social impact space. So every day is so different. I don't know what to tell you, honestly. Sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes I am on the road, like today. I guess I'll start with today. Today was all over the place. I went out today. I went to a cafe and did a little bit of work because I needed to be elsewhere, a little bit more uptown than I usually am. And because I had a writing workshop to facilitate for a high school, a local high school here in Toronto, as part of my work with Living Hyphen. And so I wanted to be a little bit closer to that place. And so I went to a cafe there. I took some meetings with my clients. And so just took a call from the cafe there, did some of my work, did some writing, which is a big part of my work. And from there, I went to, what did I do? I went to the high school and I facilitated a writing workshop, which, like I mentioned, is part of what I do with Living Hyphen. So in addition to publishing a magazine and hosting a podcast, we also facilitate writing workshops for racialized writers who, for a very long time have been told that their stories don't matter, that they're not important. And so I'm really working to kind of dismantle and disrupt that thinking through these writing workshops. And today was really, really special because I went to an all-girls school and they were all Filipinas. And it's the first time that I've done that at the high school level of just like all Filipina students. And one of the teachers there specifically saw a need to deliver programming for, their substantial Filipino community. And so it was just so wonderful to be able to, I'm Filipina. I don't know if I mentioned that. Well, no, I didn't. I just told you I had Filipino food, but I'm Filipina. And so getting to work with youth in our community is so, so important to me. And so I did that and came back home after that. And honestly, like it's been a crazy time. One of my clients is Planned Parenthood Toronto, and there has been a lot that has been happening, obviously, in the United States around Roe versus Wade and how, abortion rights are going to be overturned in the US. And so we've just really been mobilizing around that and how to increase access to abortion here in Canada. So it's quite different work. This is not an average day for me. And then obviously now I'm eating on camera with both of you. So today's kind of very strange, even by my standards, but yeah, it's all very, very different. But a large part of the work that I do is this freelance work and also the writing workshops for Living Hyphen. So I don't know if that's a very simple answer, but
that's really amazing. And I guess the great thing about your work is that since every day is different, it doesn't become monotonous. So it kind of keeps you on your toes all the time. You're always talking to people. It's not like you go into the office and you see the same people every day doing the same task. I guess that's part of being a creative writer, and it's part of being an artist. And as you were saying, like the mission of Living Hyphen and your mission, I guess that all just comes with it, right? It comes with wanting to reach as many people. And I'm curious, you said that the high school that you were at, it was all Filipina students. It's not an all Filipino school. Right?
No, okay. It's not an all Filipina school. That would be awesome.
I was like, what, where?
Are you both Filipina?
Yes, we are.
Okay. No, it's an all girls school, but the class that I had specifically was for exclusively Filipina students because we wanted to create programming for them because it doesn't exist. And
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to create a space where they felt supported and safe to tell their stories.
You know what's really interesting? When I was in high school, I'm also a writer in many ways. I'm a songwriter, so I write lyrics.
Oh,
And my creative writing classes in high school were always my favorite place to like. There were these exercises I remember where it would just be like at the beginning of class, where when we sat down, you just start writing and you don't stop for any reason. You just keep going and going and going for like 10 minutes, and then in the end, you see like, you know, what came about. And I think now more than ever, there's a push. There's almost like this one side that's pushing for the arts to be eliminated, and there's another side that's pushing, you know, to advocate for the importance of writing and creative outlets for young people, especially young people who, of diverse backgrounds, who, as you said, whose stories were not always welcomed in these spaces. And I think, Christina, I think you'll agree, an ongoing theme across our series is the importance of telling these stories, and why we're so passionate about this series, because history, you know, has for so long, especially in Canada and other parts of the world, has been told from one point of view. And being able to amplify all our diverse backgrounds to this day, as it's still upcoming, is so important to us. So it's amazing work that you do. I wish that, you know, you came into my high school many, many years ago. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wish this was a norm even back then, but to know that you're doing this is so powerful, and it's amazing.
thank you. Yeah, I know. I wish that too. And it's funny because I actually feel really lucky with my upbringing and like where I grew up. You know, obviously I grew up in Toronto, and it's a very diverse, multicultural place. I specifically grew up, well, when I first moved to Canada, so I moved from the Philippines when I was 4. And then, yeah, so I moved from the Philippines when I was 4, moved to Scarborough first. So very, very diverse, huge Filipino population. And then from there, my family moved to Markham, which is also very, very diverse. I think it's the Markham, I read it on recently, how Markham has the highest population of visible minorities in all of Canada. So very diverse community. And even when I was in high school, all of my teachers were from different ethnic backgrounds. And so very lucky in that way to have felt supported. But even then, you know, like, sure, all of my classmates were different ethnic backgrounds, but a lot of the media that I consumed, you know, the TV shows, the movies, the things that were quote unquote important, and, you know, the cultural touch points that we look to were still filled with, you know, white people. You know, it's a white dominated space. And so the books that I read, everything. And so while the everyday people that I grew up with were from everywhere, the major institutions around me were still very white dominated. And I know that had an impact on me still, you know, and I mean, that's the whole reason why I created Living Hyphen, because I wanted to see more diverse voices in literature and the books that I was reading. And so, yeah. I also wish I had more, you know, more of this kind of cultural programming growing up.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm at loss for words right now because the conversation was so intriguing as I'm eating my aburi sushi. But yeah, we definitely in the space where ironically that they want to cut back on like the funding for the arts, unlike the basically the platform that they where we want to speak, whereas for us we're trying to fight back with every little bit we got. And especially with your daily life, it's definitely never dull moment for sure. And especially with the ongoing situation of Roe versus Wade is definitely important. And as Filipina Canadians in this diaspora, it's like we're very, even though it's not that far from home, because that technically we are right next door. In the Philippines, what's even saddening for me is that abortion is illegal there, and it's just really that kind of signifies of like, what does this mean for us if it's not safe for any women, especially racialized women like us, if we can't get it anywhere, where is our safety net?
Yeah, I mean, that case, especially, abortion rights in the Philippines. I mean, we're also a very Catholic, majority Catholic country where there is not really a separation between church and state, right? And so in terms of reproductive justice and rights, there's a lot more to unpack there in the Philippines that I don't even know, because I have been gone for so long. And yeah, I'm not that connected to what it's like there, but I'm sure, that access to abortion, to even contraception, is something else entirely. But anyway, yeah, I won't speak to it because I don't know too much about it from like the Philippines perspective, but yeah, it's a huge issue.
Yeah, and sadly, as Christina said, like when we see these important rights being targeted and being wanted to take down right next door, for us, it's scary. But being Filipino Canadians, it's almost like, oh my God, I feel like I should know more. On that topic, the next question is, what inspired you to start Living Hyphen? Take that bite. Take that bite. Take that bite and chew. Totally fine. Because as you're saying, I'm curious, like, did you have a background? Like, what did you go to school for? Like, how did your family react? Like, I don't know, like this is also a common theme across the ARC series. Like Christine and I are often partnered up in the series, and because we're both Filipino, like we understand the pressures of being, I was also born in the Philippines, but being like immigrants or Canadians in Canada, and certain expectations to become stable, financially stable, is often at the forefront of what our parents want for us. So, what was your background coming into it? What kind of support did you have?
Yeah, so in terms of background, I always was interested in writing. I don't know if I would have called myself a writer at a younger age. I feel like I had a lot of hangups in terms of my confidence and like what I thought made a writer. But I always really enjoyed writing. I actually wanted to go into journalism after high school, but I decided to study political science and sociology first. I was the editor of our student newspaper in my high school. And I had attended like a journalism conference in my senior year. And I was talking to some journalists who had recommended or advised that if you want to get into journalism, study first the kind of subject area that you want to write about before, going into journalism school right away. And so that's why I decided to go into political science and sociology. Really have always been interested in politics and international affairs. And so that's why I did it. And then, so I always considered myself a writer. That was always the goal, but a few turns happened, and I'm like, how do I shorten my life story here? But basically, I had worked in the nonprofit sector, worked in marketing communications for a long time, still am, like I mentioned, and I really enjoyed it because I found a way to use, my writing skills in a way that helped causes that I strongly believed in. And so that was kind of a way I fed that part of myself. And I don't know, I'm always interested in so many different things. Like, if you follow me or if you're my friend, that like I'm always doing different things because I'm so interested in everything. And I had gotten involved with this organization called the Feminist Art Collective here in Toronto, and they put on a conference every year. Obviously, the pandemic has changed that a little bit, but a conference to bring together activists, artists, educators, all these different people who discuss feminist issues. And they had put together this panel one time for one of their conferences that gathered writers of color to talk about their experiences in the publishing industry here in Canada. And of course I attended. That's, considering my interest in writing, I really wanted to learn more from these people. And it was kind of like, I don't know, it was a disheartening conversation because I heard how difficult it was for these racialized writers to get their work published, and hearing from them how all of these different media houses and publishing companies have quotas on how many Asian writers they'll publish in a particular season, how many Indigenous writers, how many, X, Y, Z. And so there's like so much competition between writers of color to get their work published. This was back in 2014, 2015. A lot has changed since then, but I think there's still a lot of work to do. Anyway, I was listening to them speak, and one of them even shared a story about how so this particular speaker, this panelist, she's of Japanese descent. So she's Japanese Canadian, but was born here in Canada. And she had written a novel about, her journey going back to Japan and what that experience was like to go back home to the motherland. And the response or the feedback that she had received from her editors was that her story was not, quote unquote, Japanese enough. And she was obviously so upset when she heard that. And I was so upset when I heard that. And she was just explaining how wild it was to hear about how her experience as a Japanese Canadian woman was not Japanese enough. How could that be? And so that really struck a chord with me. And I still remember that whole panel clear as day up until now, because it was very much the spark or the eureka moment for Living Hyphen. When I heard that, I was so angry to hear that these gatekeepers would say that to someone, and it made me scared or distressed for myself, thinking like, is my story, if and when I choose to write my novel, I don't know what it will look like, but I know that being Filipina, there are parts of my identity that just slip into my writing, whether it's like the crux of the story or just a detail about the food I'm eating or the food the character is eating, it just happens. And so I got really scared about that. And so I wanted to do something on my own. And that's why I thought of this idea for Living Hyphen. And I put some feelers out there, started to talk to a few other people to hear what they thought about this idea and if it was interesting. And so that was back in like 2014 or 2015. And honestly, it took me a long time to actually put everything together. It took me I put out a call for submissions for Living Hyphen in 2017. So that's 2-3 years later. And then we launched the magazine in 2018. So it took a long time for me to actually act on this idea. And a large part of that is because, life. I was early 20s. So I was busy doing other things as well. But largely because I was nervous to do something that is as big as this. And I also was worried. I remember I asked so many other artists in the city and friends who were in the art scene, asking them like, oh, does something like this already exist? Is there a magazine or a publication that does something like this already? Because if there is, I don't want to do it. And I was just really nervous about stepping on anyone's toes. And I was like, oh, someone's already doing this. I'll just support, I'll support that organization or that publication. And sorry, I feel like I'm taking up so much space here, but I remember talking to this one woman, Leonika Valsius, who was, I don't know how involved she is right now with the Festival of Literary Diversity. It's called The Fold, and it happens in Brampton every year. Great festival. And Leonika had told me, I had told her these fears, and I had asked her what other orgs are out there. And she said something to me that like I always mention to everyone that I talk to when they ask about this, you know, how Living Hyphen started. Because again, it was another light bulb moment for me. And she told me, Justine, you know, so what if there are other organizations or publications or art collectives, whatever, that are doing work like this? You know, she said, how many health and fashion and beauty magazines exist out there that specifically cater to, you know, white women or white people, and no one's telling them to stop making those, you know? And it was just such a light bulb moment for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, I had never thought of that, that subconsciously, unknowingly, I was operating off of this like mentality of scarcity, that, you know, there can only be one of us that does something like this. You know, there can only be one organization, and to compete with one another is a bad thing. And so when she told me that, it completely shifted my thinking. And that's what really inspired me to do this and to just create more spaces where we can share our stories, share our work. And so here we are. Yeah, like what, how many years later? And we have published 2 magazines now, have a podcast. Some of our stories were turned into a stage play last year. It's been awesome. It's been so cool. I'll shut up now.
God, no, I was gonna say thank you so much for sharing that story. And in many ways, you know, I was getting emotional myself, like hearing, you know, your eureka moments and your light bulb moments. First of all, I had never thought about that. How subconsciously we don't question when a new magazine comes out on fashion. We don't question, you know, all these other outlets for consumerism. You know what I mean? For women and women with money, and you know what I mean. So it's like, it's interesting that that was one of your light bulb moments, but your first light bulb moment, your first eureka moment, actually like really hit me, because similar. It's quite similar actually to it, to how ARC started, how we came together out of anger, out of fear. It was in the height of the anti-Asian hate violence. I mean, violence towards racialized groups, marginalized groups have been going on forever. But I think in my lifetime, how it has been amplified and normalized. It's becoming more and more like, see it in the news every other week, right? I don't remember seeing that growing up. And I think that is one of the reasons why myself and my other co-founders started messaging each other outside of like this big group that we were in of young Canadian women who are part of a parliamentary summit, Equal Voice, Daughters of the Vote. I think that's what really drew us together. And I think it's interesting to think about how it's sad, but it's often true that out of these moments of like realization of violence, of suppression, of oppression, and you know, all of these negative things, beautiful things can truly come out of it, like Living Hyphen, like ARC. Like we came together because we actually checked up on each other, like, how are you feeling, are you okay, like this is a lot to be kind of dealing with right now in our lifetime that we haven't necessarily experienced. So thank you so much for sharing that story. It sat with me. It actually, like, yeah, it touched me very much.
Yeah, and just to add on with Aaliyah, yeah, and like Aaliyah, thank you so much for sharing. And then when you were telling us the story about how one of the authors was like writing her story about her homecoming to Japan, and then saying what the editors, and it's like not Japanese enough. I'm just like, eh? I'm like, excuse me, like, who are you to tell her or the writer about their truth? And I'm just, that really struck a chord with me too, because I am just pissed. And plus, I didn't know there was a quota for, especially for racialized writers. I didn't think there would be needing one, in all honesty, because I thought it would be kind of like an open call of some ways. But yeah, that's my tea. But I'm very happy and grateful that you were able to start Living Hyphen and everything just took off for there. So for that, thank you.
No, thank you. And Yeah, I don't know if there's a quota still, but because I know also there's been a lot of changes over the last few years, this conversation of representation and diversity. When I first started Living Hyphen, which, it doesn't seem that long ago, 2017 was 5 years ago. Doesn't seem that long ago, but those conversations were very few and far between at the time. And so a lot has changed over the last few years, seeing, I don't know, we're just seeing a lot more racialized voices in the mainstream. Certainly not enough, considering, we are the majority. It's still not the majority of stories that are being told, but now more than ever, at least I'm seeing more of those stories.
Interestingly, what just popped in my head after Christina, you brought up that example that Justine mentioned, the gatekeeping, although we're seeing, more representation on the television. I think we spoke about this before, Christina, in another episode, like Kim's Convenience, for example. Though we're seeing more representation, it's interesting to hear about how gatekeeping continues through more covert ways. So though the show, it was a success, I enjoyed a lot of episodes in the show, hearing from the actors in the show that showrunners, writers, and producers would tell them, they would write their scripts and they would tell them, like, this is how we're going to represent you as a Korean mother. And when they would try to speak up about it, when they would try to say this is not authentic to our culture, that's not what sells. Basically, it's the the message that the actors were trying to convey. It's like, that's not funny enough, or it's like, this is like, a lot of these writers weren't Korean. So it was very, when I was reading that, I was reading how Simu Liu was like, listen, like, this is BS, basically. This is not our culture. I was really saddened. And it's just the reality that gatekeeping still occurs in many more covert ways behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think a really important discussion or point is that, like, we are celebrating a lot more Asian, Black, Indigenous, racialized people in mainstream media, in movies and TV. And we're seeing a lot more of their faces, like there are more actors, right? Which is great, but representation needs to go deeper than just what you see on screen, right? And exactly what you're saying, Aaliyah, in that it's not just like, who are your actors, who are like the front facing public figures who are, telling these stories, because like, who's writing the stories, who are the people who are actually directing, producing, all of the higher leadership positions where decisions are being made. That's where representation needs to happen too, and where, like, I think a lot more equitable changes will actually be made is at that higher level, not just, literally, like, not like, I'm not trying to dismiss actors who are doing this work. They're doing the work, right? They are doing their job, but it needs to go beyond that. Like, it's a performance still if it's just you splashing, a Black or brown face on your show or on your whatever advertising, whatever it is. And so that's a really great point about gatekeeping.
Yeah, most definitely. And honestly, from there, I just really hope that more changes will occur over time, because it does need to happen. But the fact that it's still happening is still boggles me. And if both of you don't mind, in terms of our next question, Justine, in terms of living article, I'm sorry, of living hyphen rather, do you have a favorite article? Like, whether if it's published in the magazines or even like still ongoing through your facilitations?
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of the stories that are shared in Living Hyphens magazines are, they're essays, they are short stories, they're poems, they're artwork, even, illustrations and photography. So really diverse genre of storytelling. And I hate this question. You're asking me to choose from all of my babies. They're so, it's so hard. And I love each one for so many different reasons, you know? But I guess one that I'll share, not necessarily a favorite, though it's a favorite, but one that I shared in my writing workshop today with the Filipina students, and one that gets me emotional every time I read it for personal reasons, is a poem called First Generation by Erica Barazzo. And you can find it in our first issue, in our inaugural issue called Entrances and Exits. And it's this really, really beautiful poem. She's Filipina Canadian, and she writes about kind of this struggle that she has had, or conflict that she has had with her parents, you know, as first generation immigrants. You know, there's this conflict for us, values wise, I guess, you know, like, how do we reconcile our Filipino values with that of Canada's values, you know, or cultural practices even. And anyway, that one, I recommend you read it if you get a chance to get your hands on that book or that magazine, that issue. Really, really beautiful, and moves me every time, because I know growing up there, you know, I felt a lot of that with my family, with my parents, you know, wanting to express my own independence and freedom, you know, growing up and running into not what they want, you know, that's not what they want. But anyway, yeah, so that's one of my favorites. And I actually just remembered one of your questions earlier, but I went on this long rambly story about how Living Hyphen started. But Leah, you asked earlier about support and family, and I know you're right. This is a huge topic, especially for those of us in Asian communities where writing and arts, it's not seen as a viable career. You know, it is like, it's a hobby, you know, that's what my dad always used to say, still says really, but he's very supportive now. And again, I'm really fortunate in that my parents were extremely supportive of everything that I wanted to do. I mean, when I told them I wanted to go into journalism, my dad was like, why don't you go into engineering? Both my parents are engineers. You know, he definitely wanted something more predictable or stable. But they still let me pursue, you know, political science, sociology, and then Living Hyphen. And so I'm very fortunate. Living Hyphen, I shared the idea with my mom back when I first had the idea and I first went to that panel discussion. And I want to bring it up because I have to shout out my mom, because she has been our number one supporter. She actually funded the publication, like the first print run of our publication was funded by her. It still is, to be honest. We are a completely independent magazine. We have found different ways to create income, but my mom still helps so much with the capital. And I think that's a huge part of the issue with a lot of arts organizations here in Canada, is that we don't have that initial funding to actually kickstart all of these amazing ideas. And so for me, I'm very privileged to, one, have, you know, emotionally supportive parents. That goes a very, very long way. And then secondly, the financial backing too is massive. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that and let you know, and like let everyone who's listening know that this is actually a project that I've been doing with my mom, and that I've been growing with my mom. And it has been so beautiful because while we are both Filipina, both immigrants, obviously, you know, we have 30 plus years difference between us. Our experiences, while similar, like, you know, we both moved from the Philippines, but at very different ages. And we come at it from two different places. And she's helped me understand from an elder's generation or an elder's perspective how difficult that has been, you know, to move to a new country, to raise children with, you know, these liberal values, crazy values. Yeah, it's and on her part, I know we always have these discussions, where she's always like, I didn't know you guys, you and your generation thought about these things, you're so deep. And it's just really beautiful to do it with her. So
Oh, that's so lovely that you share that, and thank you so much, and shout out to your mom. On these segments, when we have fellow Filipina Canadians and when they share the support of their parents, I guess especially the mothers, like we had another guest, Richie Valdez, go check out that episode if you haven't, who gave a story about her mother's support throughout her campaign, and to me just as much as your story, because I think Filipino women, especially I guess older generations, are notorious for having a particular stereotype of being just like the hard asses. I don't know if we're gonna have to bleep that out, I'm not sure. But like notorious for just being like so hard on their daughters, so strict. And I think when we start to talk about, when we take a step back and we understand, Justine, as you're saying, where they're coming from, the country that they grew up in, the hardships that they endured moving to a new country, raising children, sometimes with not a lot of money. And then also the expectation to support family back in the Philippines. Like there's a lot of pressure that our parents have gone through. And I think it's very easy to just continuously point blame for all of our traumas onto our parents. It's good to recognize generational trauma and generational toxicity. But at the same time, when we hear stories like this, when we're able to highlight where, our moms come through for us in more ways than one, I'm going to cry, in more ways than one, it's really beautiful. I'm going to stop before I cry.
It's all good. And oh yeah, well, don't worry. It's my turn I'll talk because Justine, I would like to apologize for making you choose with all the stories because they're all so beautiful. I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that.
No. Can I say something?
Oh, by all means, please.
Oh, Ali, I want to give you a hug, but yes, I wanted to just address it because I know that this is something that a lot of us from immigrant communities, from racialized communities really struggle with, is like, how do we, like reconcile these differences with our parents and also acknowledge knowing how much they have done for us, and especially in Filipino communities, there's this, we have what utang ng loob, which means, a debt of gratitude, right? There's this, like, you can't even ever pay this debt of gratitude, right? There is this debt of gratitude that we have for our parents, for all of the sacrifices that they have done and have given for us, but there is that toxicity. Sometimes there's a lot of traumatic behaviors and patterns that continue. And I wanted to share, I'm pulling it up right now because I have a quote that I always share. I run a writing workshop on intergenerational storytelling and healing across generations. And there is this this quote that I read recently from Audre Lorde, who is a activist, feminist, scholar, writer, amazing thought leader person. So it's from her book of essays called Sister Outsider. And she wrote, each one of us is here because somebody before us did something to make it possible. To learn from their mistakes is not to lessen our debt to them, nor to the hard work of becoming ourselves. We do not have to romanticize our past in order to be aware of how it seeds our present. We do not have to suffer the waste of an amnesia that robs us of the lessons of the past, rather than permit us to read them with pride as well as deep understanding. And I always share that because it's so beautiful and so compassionate, both to our parents and our elders, as well as to ourselves, of, recognizing or holding these two truths at once, recognizing and holding the fact that they did sacrifice so much. There is a debt there. There is a gratitude there. And there are also patterns, behaviors, cycles of toxicity and trauma that we need to break to be able to, be better for future generations.
That is so beautiful. Sorry, can you repeat the name of the writer and the title?
Yeah, so that's Audre Lorde, and it's in her book of essays called Sister Outsider.
Sister Outsider. Awesome. Okay.
It's brilliant. You need to read it.
That's really hits home. I guess we can move on to the next question.
Yeah, definitely. Oh man.
We kind of spoke about this a little bit. I'm just gonna get emotional again, briefly, I guess, because we it's kind of like we keep talking about this throughout all the questions, so it's a good thing. Are there any particular ways or any particular things that you would highlight about your culture that has shaped you as a person? Maybe anything specific?
I think first and foremost, the family orientedness of our culture as Filipinos is one that has deeply and profoundly impacted my not just my identity, but also the life choices that I've made. Yeah, I am very close to my family, and I feel very grateful to have them in my life. And so, yeah, that has shaped a lot, again, just like a lot of decisions that I've made and why I do the things that I do without getting too into it. Yeah, and I also think that there is something about being Filipino, and maybe this is just being racialized. I don't know. I don't know if it's Filipino per se, but to be a Filipino woman and to be doing this work in anti-oppression and anti-racism and equity, this spirit of resistance, I think, is a huge part of our culture. We are colonized by the Spanish for 300, if not more than 300 years, colonized by the US for 50 years. And so we, time and time again have had to resist colonizing forces, and there's still a lot of work to do. And I think that there's a lot of problems still within the Filipino community in terms of colonization and colonial mentality. But I do think that as a people, we are survivors, we are resistors, we are warriors. And so I think a lot of that is in me. And so, yeah, I think that.
That is so beautiful. And you know what? That's really something that stands to Filipinos wherever we go in the world. We're just more and more as I get older, and this has been another theme ongoing in our episodes with Filipino Canadians, that I guess growing up in Canada, there's a point in our lives where we're like, I don't want to bring adobo to school. I want Lunchables. And as you get older, you're like, you know what? Being Filipino is, I have never been more proud to be Filipino, and I continually become more proud to be Filipino, to like of our culture, of our resilience as a culture, of our strength, and the way you put it, we're warriors, and our history is so rich. And sadly, I feel like I'm still missing a lot of that. Like there's a lot I don't know, and I wish I did. But I'm hoping as I get older, and the more people I meet, like you, Justine, like I just learn more and more, and I become more and more proud to be Filipino. So exciting times.
Yeah, and if you both don't mind of adding my 2 cents in, it's just that, yeah, and especially with bringing awareness, and especially with June, with being like Filipino Heritage Month in Ontario, and just seeing our culture being recognized as, and over around the world too, for having a lot of people like asking us like where are we from, and then typically we would say Philippines, and they're like the nicest hardworking people ever, and I'm like, thank you. And just looking back with my families, with my ancestry, just thinking about the resilience, the hard work, and even despite all the intergenerational drama, even the trauma that that a lot of Filipinos went through, it's definitely shows that we're still here, we're still fighting, and actually it's one of our biggest strengths.
And I think we can move on to our next question, Christina.
Absolutely. So in I'm not sure if this is the final question. Is it, Aaliyah?
You know what? It could be.
All right.
We can end off with this question. It's one of my favorite questions because it's so emotional. I like when I like getting all like emotional. Yeah, Christina, you can end it off with this question, and then we can finish off with a reading.
All right. So for our final question there, Justine, whenever you're ready, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah. I think the advice I would give would be to just trust the process, to just trust the process that you're going to get to where you need to be. Wow. Yeah, this question is emotional. Oh no. Duh. Just because I feel like growing up, I had a lot of questions and I was always really itching to, I don't know, there was just a lot of questions in terms of identity, who I was and like where I fit in, all of these things. And also with the work that I do, like I mentioned, I'm interested in so many different things and wanting to get involved with everything and not feeling like I was ever doing enough or that I myself was enough, was something that I think younger Justine, in her teens, early 20s, always felt or always struggled with. But, here where I am now, where so much of the work that I do, I am so proud of and I believe in so strongly, and I just love and I think is amazing. And I had to go through everything I had to go through to be where I am today. I feel like that sounds like a cliche and, that's obvious, but yeah, like at that time I was constantly itching to get out of where I was or to just be different. But I needed to experience all of those things to be able to do the work that I do with Living Hyphen now, and to be able to speak to this experience of living in between cultures and, the tensions and the conflict that I might have felt growing up. That was all for a reason. And that was all so that, we could have conversations like this. And I guess what I didn't realize then was that everyone around me was feeling similarly, like especially growing up in this school that was so diverse with classmates who were from, different ethnic backgrounds, but also from many racialized immigrant communities. We were all feeling similarly. And so, yeah, I just feel like trusting the process and everything will work out the way it's supposed to work out, I think is what I would tell younger Justine.
That is beautiful and yes, emotional. I told you it was going to be emotional. I feel like it always gets emotional because I think we reminisce on the hardships, and it to add to that, my mom always read this poem to me growing up called Desiderata. And there's a line in it that says, whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. And that has always stuck with me. It's right along the lines of trust the process. And, it sounds cliche, but it's true. Like everything does end up where it should be,
Can you share that? Tell me the title after this or send me an
Yeah.
email.
Yeah, oh my God, I'm gonna share it with you. It's like have a little crying session. It is so beautiful, and it is that. It is really along the lines of, sometimes on your darkest days, it feels like I'm never gonna get out of this, and like remembering that that's another quote, like, when after a storm, like, a rainbow comes, like, it's just part of life. Um, Juno Salazar Perennias, one of my favorite professors, scholars, in her book Decolonizing Extinction, precarities in life is these are planetary conditions. living, dying, suffering. Like these are things that we can't control. It's going to happen whether we live in like never gonna be a perfect world, but like it just happens. But I think the most important thing is like, when you have that support, as you're saying, your family that's been there for you, that supported you, when you surround yourself with people like now, like what we're doing, we get to engage in this conversation that, many years ago, I don't think we would have been doing, eating local Asian food and like drooling over it. Like it's beautiful, the place where we have all come to now, no matter the hardships that we've come across. So thank you so much. That was beautiful. Christina?
Oh man, this really hits close to home for me too. I was about to be in a crying session. I'm like, hold it together, Tin, hold it together. Yeah, and definitely trust the process too. And everything does happen for a reason, but especially with us, with trying to find our way back to ourselves, where we're in our happy place. It's kind of bringing to like a full circle, a wholesome moment right there, and just shows that we're still standing and we're not going anywhere. And you've seen that part of the world, but or at least try to experience some parts. But in the end, it's like it's basically with our culture, and especially as Filipino Canadians in this diaspora, is where it's at. To put it simply.
Yes, exactly. So I think that wraps up our question period. Justine,
Thank you. This was so much fun.
I've loved this so much. It's
when you first told me about it, I was like, what are we doing?
But isn't it crazy how even through the screen we can really connect? It's just that act of sitting down over good food and telling our stories and connecting as Filipino Canadians and other Asian Canadians that we've had. It's just been such a pleasure, and you are just amazing. It's been such an honor to meet you. Yeah. Before we end off, tell us a rating of your food out of 5, out of 10, however you want to do it.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I've only had the adobo. I like want everything, but I don't know. What can I say? It's 10 out of 10. It's so good. I can't complain. It's so good.
Amazing.
What about you both?
Echo Sushi, it's perfect. I mean, everything was just delicious. Sometimes you get sushi and they're like not cut evenly, and that for me is like, sometimes my mouth will be stuffed, sometimes it's not enough, but everything was perfect. And it's a great local restaurant, Echo Sushi in Midtown. So that's a 10 out of 10.
In terms for me, well, Torch Press Sushi has lived up to their promises, especially with their fresh thick cut premium fish, top grade short grain sushi rice, and unique aburi torch sushi. Literally taste in every piece, and especially when I had a bite of the pieces of torch sushi, like as both of you were talking, while I was eating, it melted in my mouth, and it was so heavenly.
Is that what made you emotional?
Well, the food was very comforting, but both of your stories just hit close to home. That makes it so worthwhile. Oh, and I had a bite of the choco matcha cheesecake. Tastes pretty good. It's one bite so far, but decadent.
Oh,
overall,
amazing.
5 out of 5 / 10 out of 10.
So good.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for viewing this episode. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Bye. Make sure to follow Justine Abigail Yu on her social medias. Check out Living Hyphen, and definitely check out ARC2. But yeah, thank you for watching.
Bye,
share, and subscribe.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.